Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm really excited to be chatting with my friend, Leslie Nicole Smith, about tips and tricks for managing stress as two ambitious, type A, high performing women, moms, executives, partners, board members, etc., etc., etc. At 50,000 hats, we have both experienced times where we're managing a lot. Leslie had actually written a great blog post for Boyden on surviving work burnout. And that inspired me to have a conversation with her about how to manage stress in our lives, especially during this very busy time. Before we jump into our conversation, I want to welcome all of our viewers, people who are joining us live. We're using Restream to stream to 3 different platforms. So on any of the platforms, or people who might be watching this afterwards, it will be available on the platforms afterwards as well. We'd love to know where you are joining us from. So please go to the comments in whichever platform you're using and drop in a comment and let us know when and where you're watching this from, either live or afterwards. We'd love to see where folks are. I also want to let you know that there is a slight delay in the streaming. So if we ask for questions, etc., and it takes a few seconds for us to read your comment or show your comment or acknowledge you, please don't take it personally. It's just a matter of the technology. So thank you again for joining us. In the streaming. So if we ask I'm questions, hearing it takes a few seconds for
That
us
is weird.
to feedback. So
It might be me. Hold on.
Don't take it personally. It's just a matter.
So sorry.
No worries. Welcome.
Phone started talking.
Welcome, Olivia from Kentucky. Thrilled to have you joining us. Others, please let us know where you are. And welcome, Leslie. I'm so excited to have this conversation with you. Thank you for being so vulnerable with your piece, the blog post, which I will drop in the comments as well. How would you start us off and think about how does stress manifest itself? I can certainly talk about how it manifests itself in me during a really stressful time in a work environment, but also the daily stress, how it manifests itself. So can you talk a little bit about how it shows up in your life and what you've noticed with people you connect with?
Absolutely, absolutely. And thank you so much for having me, Shake. I'm so excited to talk with you today and to all of our viewers. So stress for me, it really shows up when there's a challenging time or a busy time. So for me, it manifests in my physical self. I can feel the stress. I also notice that sometimes I may eat differently than I'm accustomed to. I either go very hard in exercise and workouts, or sometimes I just shut down. But I really feel that my mind and my body talk to me. And honestly, our mind and our bodies talk to they talk to us. So whether it's you, whether it's the folks that I've been in contact with, sometimes I can even see it. I can see it on my husband. I'm like, hold on, what's going on in your life? But I have a pretty good gift of discernment to see it. And so I always encourage even my friends and family to just sit down, just take a chill pill, as my dad would say.
Oh, I love the chill pill. It's so interesting, right? Oftentimes, somatically, a fancy way of saying like our body, the system that is the human body that we occupy during our
Mhm.
lifetime gives us the signals. It's a
Oh,
matter of
absolutely.
paying attention to that. And and the eating habits or the sleeping habits. I know for me, sleep can tell a lot, right, as to
Mhm.
what's going on in my life, or my fuse, as I call it, gets as it gets shorter and shorter. I know that for me, sometimes if I notice I'm very snappy with the people I love the most, right?
Mhm.
The ones I
I would agree
trust.
with you on both of those. Sleep and snappy, yes.
Yeah, and so that's when I have to say, "Hey, what's going on with me?
Mhm.
And how do I pay attention to what's going on?" So let's talk about specific tips on
Mhm.
how you have managed your stress, and I'm happy to add some other ones as well. But what's working for you, and how do you continue to lean into some of the things that are working for you?
Mhm. So, during this time, I mean, I'm in my 40s now, so I feel like I manage stress much differently than I did in my 20s and 30s. Have two very active children. One is a child, one is a teenager, um, and I'm married. And like you said, we wear many hats. And so, at this point in my life, I work out, attempt to eat as healthy as I possibly can. Of course, still enjoying the food because I don't necessarily want to restrict myself totally. But I work with a therapist. I've been in therapy since I was 16, on and off throughout my entire life. I'm privileged enough to be working with a life coach as well. And the life coach is different than the therapist in that, she helps me really work towards my future goals and really try to prescribe, I shouldn't even say prescribe, work out a prescription for my own self that will not allow me to have burnout. And so, whether that means saying no to various events or parties, or just even like going to the movies, the other week, I was so drained that I was like, you know what? I'm going to pay the extra $10 to $20 for Instacart to drop my groceries off. Let me just go online. And instead of me, spending that hour and a half to go out, I just use the resources that I do have. And I do realize not everyone has the same resources, but being able to tap into what I like to call your personal board of directors, or your network, or your family and your friends, or I like to even say my tribe, and ask for help. So
Mhm.
it could be my family, it could be my friends, it could be professionals that I hire. I also have a personal trainer. And then my family likes to know I love to sleep. You mentioned sleep. So when my sleeping is off, I also know that I'm stressed. And so then, this weekend I was like, oh my gosh, what do we have planned? And I have, a volunteering thing that I'm doing with my sorority earlier in the day. But I plan to come home and sit on the couch and watch Hallmark or Netflix movies, and chill and like have like just wonderful, peaceful, quiet. Well, I can't say it's too quiet because I have two kids, but you know what I mean. You get my
As
drift.
quiet as it gets with children around, right?
But I realize, in working with the life coach, we have like these all of these prescriptions and all of these experts out there, right? We have the 5 a.m. club. You're most successful if you wake up at 5 a.m. Well, what if you're not a morning person? What
I
if that's
am
not the
not
time
the
for you?
wake up at 5 a.m. I'll stay up till 4 a.m., but not waking up at 5 a.m.
Yeah, and I can't stay up till 3 or 4 a.m. Once that clock hits double digits, I'm done. So, but yeah, I mean, you just have to really figure out what works for you. And I realize we have all of these individuals that we hire, or all these individuals that we talk to, that can give advice or a prescription, but you really have to figure out like what is going to work for you. Meditation, writing in a journal. For me, I am very much involved in my faith too. So whether it's going to church or reading my word, um, or just reading a book. So you got to figure out like what is going to bring you the most joy and peace.
You said so much there, and I'm like, plus 1,000, right? To all of those comments, because um, a few things that stand out. No is a complete sentence. I can't
That part.
remember who said it. I think Brene Brown has said it in some of her podcasts and some of the books that she's written. Um, But learning that, it has been such a big thing. It's still very uncomfortable to me. Even saying it right now, like I feel butterflies going in my stomach, right? That no, the word no, I'm very uncomfortable with, but testing that, right? What
Mhm,
happens when I say
mhm,
no? Um,
mhm,
I was also thinking a lot about how to test what works for us. Some
mhm.
things that might work for you may not work for me at all, right? But that's hard
Absolutely,
to know unless we test it and give it enough time to see,
absolutely.
is it working and is it not? And habit building. I'm really bad at habit building. So learning to do if it's the
Mhm.
atomic habits or any of the other mechanisms, and knowing that what you know not having the blue dot on Peloton for one day doesn't mean like, oh no, it's the end of the
Right.
world. It's like tomorrow is a new day and
New day.
start again. So all of those experiences are so important. And when I was at a university as an employee, I had taken a time management class and went in like with my notepad and read a long
Mhm.
time ago, so not as techie, but expecting the teacher, the instructor, to give us like, here is the perfect system that's going to work for you. Right? I've cracked the code. Here it is. You're welcome. And I was so shocked, yet it made such a lasting impression decades later. I'm mentioning this, but
Mhm,
the person said, what's the system that's going to work for you on your worst days? Not on your
mhm,
best days, but on your
mhm,
worst days. When you're
mhm,
stressed out, when you're like throwing everything else out the
mhm,
window, what is that system that's going to work for you? Design with that in mind. And
mhm,
I think it's such an important aspect, right? It's easy to say, I'm going to wake up every day at 5 o'clock. Not easy
mhm.
for me at all. I don't wake up at 5 o'clock anymore. And go to the gym. That's great, but that may not be realistic when
Right.
you're exhausted and pulled into 50 different direction and your mind is constantly going. And
Mhm,
even if you're not a night owl, you couldn't fall asleep until 4 o'clock, right?
mhm,
What are
mhm.
those trade-offs, and how do
Right.
you test? And have you found any time related tips or tricks that work for you specifically, whether it's doing things at a certain time? I recently, during a networking event, met with somebody who said, if it's 6 o'clock, they're at the gym. He said, I don't have to actually work out, but I have to be at the
He's
gym.
there.
He's there. He's like, it's my habit. It's 6 o'clock. I'm
I
at the
love it.
gym. So I thought that was funny, but a great way to train your body.
Mhm.
Do you have other ones that
I
work?
do. So, like for me, when I get up, depending on what day of the week it is, because my husband and I alternate in getting the kids on the bus every morning. But depending on what day it is, um, I do wake up. I wake up at 5 a.m. twice a week to go to the gym and to be there by 6:30. When today did not feel like
Yeah.
going, but I pushed. And then also throughout the week, if it's my day to put the children on the bus, as soon as I get out the bed, I put on my workout clothes. I put the kids on the bus, and then I get my workout in. Normally, though, when I get up, I get into my meditation, my quiet time. I like to call it my quiet time, and read
Mm,
my Bible and listen to some motivating music. Get my kids up. So those are things that I have to do in the morning, or they will never get done. And there are times they don't get done because once I get the kids on the bus and I don't get back there and work out or go to the gym and work out, it's not going to happen. The laptop opens and I'm working. Um, Other habits, I like to be in the bed, my bed around 9:30. I'm not sleep, but I like to be in the bed. Um, so those are just some of the habits that I've created for myself. And they've tended to work. I've learned a new habit that's not really a habit. I've realized that you talk about on your worst days, right? And
mhm.
sometimes my on my worst day, it's literally just getting out the bed or making my bed or showering or, eating an apple, whatever it is, and I'm just thinking of things or just drinking like a half a gallon of water because for me sometimes it's just making it. Some days,
Mm,
we hear progress not perfection, and so some days we do have bad days. And so what can I do to bring myself joy or peace or happiness on that particular day? And so I've come to terms that I have to give myself grace. But once you get to a point where it's like 5 days in a row, you're like, "Okay, it's time to have a come to Jesus moment."
mm, mm.
Yeah.
Um, what about time related tricks
Mhm,
for work day? I personally like time blocking. I've used time
mhm.
blocking for a really long time. Doesn't mean some of those blocks don't get moved or deleted as the day happens, but I like to have focus time. And the other thing I've tried to implement, this is still very much a work in progress, is 25-minute and 50-minute meetings.
Mhm.
So I schedule for 25 minutes to allow for 5-minute follow up, bio break, whatever it might be,
Right.
and 50 minutes. And I communicate that to people beginning of the meeting.
Mhm.
My calendar invites are 25 minutes and 50 minutes. Nobody pays attention to that, honestly. Um, so
I've
when I
heard you say
start,
that before.
yeah, when I start the meeting, I say to people, my rule is, and I recently learned in a book called Big Feelings, they talk about
Mhm.
if you say my rule is, not my practices. If you say I have a personal
Mm.
rule of blank,
Mhm.
people tend to respect it a little more,
Right.
the language. And then a friend was saying that their organization, all of their meetings actually start 5 minutes late or 10 minutes late,
Mm.
to allow for that transition time. So while the meeting
Okay.
start time is that, but the official start time is if it's 20, 30 minutes or an hour. And I thought
Mhm.
that was interesting. But if you all know that you're starting late, then you
Yep.
all show up late and
You
it's
show up late.
but other things or tools that you've used um, to take out the stress and make your
Yep.
work day a little easier?
Absolutely. So I also use the time blocking, but most recently I implemented Calendly. And Calendly has been a lifesaver. So you and I were both also in executive recruiting, and I would spend a lot of time going back and forth with potential candidates on scheduling a meeting. And that became very stressful for me. So I looked into Calendly, and now interviews are scheduled on my behalf. I woke up this morning and had 3 interviews in my sleep. Like, it's amazing, it saves a lot of time. I was also able to buffer it. So you talked about having that 5 to 10-minute grace period. I can't have any interviews scheduled if I don't have a 15-minute buffer just to, grab a bite to eat, take a walk, have a bio break, whatever it is. It just allows me to have some time and some peace, and it just really saves a lot of time using that tool. And there's all sorts of tools out there, Schedulicity, etc.
I didn't realize that you could do, until you mentioned it in a meeting,
Mhm,
that you could do that buffering. That's awesome
mhm.
that it
It's
has that
amazing.
feature.
It's amazing.
That's great.
Yep.
I want to invite folks in our audience to also ask questions or add comments of things that might be working for you or things that you might be testing. I also want to shout out to one of our colleagues, Lindsay, for joining us from Ohio.
Hey,
So excited
Lindsay.
to see you in the audience. So let us know, are there questions? And you can actually be an anonymous user and put in chat a question anonymously. So feel free to do that, or afterwards, if you're not able to watch live, add to comments and we'll certainly monitor those. Um, you mentioned, Leslie, meditation. Talk to me
Mhm,
a little more. Morning meditation, I love. Do
Mhm.
you incorporate meditation into your day in any way?
Not on a regular basis. In the morning, it's either, like, I just play music and I'm literally sitting over there in my chair, and I just sit there and I just listen to inspirational, gospel music in the morning. Um, but I can't say that it's something that I do throughout the day. I will say that it would probably help me. It would, and, I do have the Peloton app, and so sometimes I will use that for, guided meditations. I find it very difficult to just sit and hum, like, I'm
Yeah,
not there yet. Not
no, not there. I actually, folks know this. I took a class in college. A
Mhm.
part of it was to meditate and write a paper about meditation, and I totally bombed that paper because, like,
Oh,
my
no.
mind is always going
Yep.
50,000 miles an hour. And writing about that, the teacher was like, "You didn't try hard enough." Now we know that meditation is a practice, and you
Mhm,
don't get there for quite some time. Um,
mhm,
there's scientific evidence showing some of this, right? But I do love guided meditation, and actually, I don't have a Peloton, but I do have the app, and
mhm,
love that they have morning meditations and sleep
mhm,
meditations during a time where I was really struggling with sleep. I went for a very long
mhm.
time without sleeping more than an hour a day. So imagine how crazy I
Ooh.
was during that time. Um, their sleep meditation actually was the thing. Ross Rayburn, shout out to Ross
Ross Rayburn
Rayburn.
is the truth. Ross Rayburn, you are the truth.
Um, his sleep meditation really helped me
Yes.
unplug. I actually use a trick I learned from my son's elementary school on a
Mm,
meditation. I don't know if this is an official meditation, but I make it. It's a set a timer for just 1 minute, 60 seconds on
mhm.
your phone. Close your eyes and smile, no matter what is going on in my life, and
I
just
love
fake
that.
smile. And again, so the science shows that it actually, your brain interprets the smile muscles and actually
Mhm.
changes the chemistry in your brain.
I
So I do that. And then I have a walkout
yes.
song, my walkout song that I listen to sometimes during the day when I need like pick me up. So
Mhm.
those are my semi meditation things that I do
I
during the days.
love that. I am going to implement the smile meditation for myself, but I'm gonna use that with my children and my husband. That's gonna be great. They're gonna be like, "Mommy, where did you get this?"
I hope they won't be like throwing tomatoes over the screen at me at some
Absolutely
day.
not. Absolutely not. That I love that though, because you're right, it does. I mean, our internal and external uh, environment really does play a factor in our heads, in our brains. So I love that. I will be
Hmm,
implementing that one. Yeah.
thank you. One thing we haven't touched on
Hmm.
more of is about boundaries and how to set and communicate. I've personally really struggled with the word boundaries. To
Hmm.
be honest, my initial image that comes to mind when I've thought about boundaries has been a barricade, and
Mm,
that has a very negative connotation for me.
mhm,
During the Dare to Lead 3-day intensive training, um, we talked a lot about boundaries being a circle you draw around things you want to keep close to you rather than
mhm,
keeping things out. So it
mhm,
reframed that for me. I still
mm,
struggle
mhm,
with communicating my boundaries
mhm.
to people and holding myself and others to those whatever I've communicated. Any words of advice around how you practice that, some successes you might have had, or language
Mhm.
you've used around boundaries?
Yeah, so for me, well, anyone that knows me, I'm pretty verbose and I'm pretty opinionated. That's no secret,
That's why
right?
we
So
love you.
no secret. But for me, sometimes, like, especially when it's work and or personal, when it's emails or phone calls, and if I am in that focus time at work and a friend calls, I just won't answer. Like I might text them and say, "Hey, I can't talk right now. I'm working." But I simply, I just have to know, like, Leslie, this is your time. And even if it's not working, I'm just sitting on the couch or I'm just watching a Netflix movie and I don't have the capacity to offer myself fully, I will choose not to respond. And so that's how I have to look at it. Do I have the capacity to really be present with you? Because sometimes I'll get on the phone, Leslie, you're not listening. You're right. I'm not. You're right, I'm not, and it's because I've
Mm,
chosen to attempt to be present, but I don't have the full power to be present, and so I feel like boundaries, yes, it's kind of keeping those close to you, but you want them to be close to you, but you also want to make yourself available to those folks, and if I can't make myself available, then I'll just say, "Hey, I'll call you back," or even emails. I really try not to unless I'm working, but not to answer emails on the weekends. And I've realized that when you start a new job, that's when you really start to that's when you really communicate your boundaries to your fellow colleagues. So if you
mm,
show that you are like totally available 24/7, guess what? They're going to try to reach you 24/7. And the one thing that I love where we work is that they've given us the flexibility to really do our jobs. They trust us to do our jobs, but they don't necessarily access to run 24/7. So I shout out to Boyd in Boston, Lisa and Wendy, for just allowing us to have the room to really create our own boundaries.
that's awesome. Thank you. Uh, and thank you, Irene, for adding that link about phrases to help you set boundaries. I love it. 59
Ooh,
phrases. I will definitely check it out. I invite others to check it out. We are about 2 minutes away from our end time. This
I
time
can't
has
believe this.
flown. I know. The final thing I wanted to ask about is tech and connectedness. I learned that if your phone is within 3 feet of your physical body, that you are tempted to, yes, mine here too. You are tempted to check it. And if you see other people checking it, you're actually tempted to check it yourself. So it's this vicious cycle.
Mhm,
Um, any thoughts or advice? It's hard, right? We're both parents
mhm,
with kids, our hearts outside of our body in schools,
mhm,
and unfortunately there's a lot that happens, so I feel like I have
mhm.
to keep my phone next to me in case of an emergency. But any advice on how you've done a little bit of a tech detox or a tech
Mhm.
break?
I have. So this is probably like 7 years ago. I've attempted to do it recently, but it hasn't worked as well. But about 7 years ago, I literally took a social media break, which what I thought was going to be 1 month turned into 6 months. And when I tell you,
Ooh.
it was wonderful. I literally felt like a newborn baby going back into social media. I was like, "Oh my gosh, people can see me. Oh my gosh." Like I felt like I was exposing myself and yeah, so it was wonderful. That is when I birthed the business out with another co-founder and co-host. So it was really a time that I was able to be creative and to really rest and to just re-energize. It was great.
Mm. Did you communicate to folks that that's what you were doing? You were going
Mhm.
down. Okay.
I did. I actually had another business as well. I was a Beachbody coach, and as you know, as probably people know, Beachbody. I mean, you have to have social media for Beachbody. But I just realized that that's when the tables turned. I stopped doing Beachbody. I went into something else. But I told them a month, but it turned into 6.
Hmm. I love
Yep.
that. Well, we're at time. My little timer is beeping at me. Hopefully, you can't hear it. But
I can't hear it.
thank you so much, Leslie, for taking the time to have this conversation with me again, for your vulnerability in sharing your personal journey through the blog post, and having an honest conversation about things that you've tested, and things that are working or not.
Mhm.
And how you're working on the work life balance. Sometimes I feel like there is no balance. It's integration, and
Integration,
by
yep.
day by day, like a friend had said to me, uh, if let's pretend three pillars, right? Pick two of the three that you are good at: a mom,
Mhm.
a spouse, or an employee. Like, you can't be good at
Mm,
all three at the same time. So
yep,
it is, some days you lean into
mhm,
one role versus the other.
yep,
So I've
yep.
appreciated your sharing, and your sharing through your social media and in our conversation here. And welcome again to our participants who were able to join us live or will be watching this replay. We really hope you will continue commenting and sharing any tips or tricks that are working for you and have worked for
Please.
you. We certainly love learning, and I hope to see folks next time around. Thank you
Thank
so much,
you. Thank
Leslie,
you,
for a
Shakay. It was so
fabulous
fun.
conversation. It
Thank
was,
you,
absolutely.
absolutely.
Thanks. Bye, everybody. See you next time.
Bye.